What is it? What is this thing? What is this thing that we've been
What is
talking
it?
about for the past year? So what is human design? So here as your basic intro, the founder of the human design system is Robert Alan Krakower. He went by Ra, as Robert Allen was like a nickname. And Uru Hu was a name given to him as the closing of the door. Basically, Ra comes in at the end of this like hyperlogical process to give us this hyperlogical system that we can play with, to that actually takes us from this very logical, and then by playing with the hyperlogical and hyperrationality of human design, it opens us up to the natural, more fluid way of being, which human design allows. And in 1987 is when he began his journey with human design.
Yeah, well, he washed up on a shore somewhere in Ibiza, basically, after having a really turbulent life. And he was a manifester, unemotional. And I remember him telling the story over and over again. He was mad. He was just manifester mad after, what was it, his third divorce. And he left, he checked out. And then he checked back in 1987. So lucky us.
Lucky us. So human design is a synthesis of existing systems, right? A synthesis of the Chinese I Ching, the zodiac astrology, and the Hindu chakra systems, and the Kabbalah tree of life. And you can see all these different aspects within like human design and the mandala.
Yes, and understanding your own uniqueness in this print, at some point in time, we're going to have to add the fifth thing. I've always talked about it, how science is like the fifth magic to show up, or the fifth, system to show up. But this would just be, and our genetic code, because that's where a lot of this came from. But
yeah,
yep.
We have a future episode on that where you can actually go into the I Ching with human design and get into the genetic code and the amino acids and stuff. So it's great because it's like, I feel like the basis of human design, you have the I Ching, the zodiac placements, the chakras, into the centers, the Kabbalah, but it also then touches into like biology and psychology and how we interact and how our bodies work. And it's really quite fascinating. It's this it's the science of human differentiation. It's why are you and why am I me and why are we different?
And it ends up being, what's so cool about this, because it's all the biology. And so it's the biology. And then when we come to the psychology of what's going on in our minds, it becomes the biology of that psychology. It's not just the sit on a couch psychology part, try to analyze the words and the so forth. It's looking into the bodygraph and seeing what the biology is actually doing for you. And then suddenly you start to realize why the psychology in your life is this way, and it's so amazing that way.
Yeah, it shows these patterns and correlations, right? So it's like this part of the body graph correlates to this expression energetically or physiologically. And it's really neat as you get into the depth of it. It's really quite beautiful. And like the more I learn about human design, the more beautiful the body graph is, the more beautiful the mandala is, and just like how intricately and beautifully all of this has been created and interwoven, and really just it really brings you to like a divine place, like to know that like everything is so precisely created. It's like, this isn't an accident. Like we are created, we are programmed. This is so organized and so beautiful. It really opens your heart into, there's something bigger than us that has made us. And there's a journey and a purpose here. And I don't know, like I get really emotional. Maybe it's like I'm a vessel of love, but I get very lovey about it.
I did too when I started to realize all of the big four ancient knowledges, that they were all onto something. And I remember there was a time in my life, probably when I was in college at some point, I wasn't sure about certain esoteric things, and astrology was just a fanciful thing that sometimes you read a horoscope about. You know what I mean? That's not knowledge. That's sort of the opposite in a way.
Yeah, it's parlor tricks. It's a little like it's a cute fortune cookie.
Till we realized they were actually onto something. And that's why when someone gets an astrology reading for real, they always notice 100% of the time that it's that there's something about it, because some of that stuff is me, they'll say. And
there's
then
patterns.
Yeah, it's patterns. That's it. And same thing with the I Ching, people trying to make sense of the I Ching, and scholars looking at the I Ching for thousands of years. It's been around, and then human design comes along and puts the rest of the English on that fastball, and it literally sends it in for a landing. It sends it right in for a landing. So suddenly the I Ching actually makes more sense, rather than just, what are your master? What ways am I? You know what I mean? Now it's like, you're these ways. And the master of the I Ching days couldn't do that the same way.
It's very much like a compass.
Hmm.
It's very much a compass. Like, I'm replaying Zelda like on Nintendo right now, and I've been loving it. And there's a point where you go in the dungeon, and at first, like you have nothing but what you walked in with, and you have to like first find the map, and then you find the compass, and then you get to like see the map and like where the treasure is and all the things. And I really feel like, the I Ching and astrology and the chakra systems, the Kabbalah, all of this, it's like you had like the aspects of like these things are all here, but never the twain shall meet. Like they didn't have a connection point. And with
Right.
human design, it's like you can understand, oh, this connects here and this connects here. And it's like this beautiful, intricate
Directly.
clockwork. Yeah,
Yes, a direct connection with all the beautiful gears of a clock that makes so much sense at the end of the day. It all ties together and makes it become finally sensible.
exactly. So,
Mhm.
and ultimately, it is human design is your individual energetic blueprint in understanding your own uniqueness. Like, this is why you are you. This is the blueprint to your sim. Like these are your character stats. And
And
it's
the only hard thing I've ever found to really get past is to the recognition at the very beginning that at the moment of birth, at the moment of separation from our mother, um, we're imprinted. It's an imprinting, and it's just not that hard to see when you start to see it at the level of human design itself. You know what I mean? You start to see it in the being. It's it is an imprinting, and you're like, oh my God, so I've been minted like a coin. That's why people have always said, oh, he's just that way. And then we
Mhm,
look at their body graph, it's like, yep, they're that way. The imprinting got given to us. I mean, it just was part of our part of what happens as we're born. It's not
mhm.
even that big of a surprise since the genome does so much other stuff. One of the things it does is pick up its imprinting. It's just not even that big of a surprise. But the last thing I would say about it is human design system and the science of our differentiation is now measurable. And what we do is we can see what's going on underneath at this genetic level as it relates to behavior, not as it relates to are you blonde hair or blue eyed or any of that. None of those physical characteristics, just sort of behavior as a simple keynote. And it reads it so we can see how that behavior is bubbling up to the surface to be the life we live. And once you start to see it, you can't miss it.
Perfect. I love that, Danny.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So next up, we have what human design is and what it is not, right? Because there's a lot of misconceptions of like, what is this, right? So human design, what it is, it's your unique energetic blueprint. What it is
Mm-hmm.
not is predictive. It's not here to be fortune telling. It's not here to be a divination tool or tell you what you're doing next Tuesday, right? It's just to show you here is your blueprint. Here's your user manual.
Yeah, and so don't ever really look to the body graph for what's going to happen to me next and or what should I do. There are other esoteric things that might help with that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And everyone's on their own journey with that. But with this one, we can all have the same language is the thing, and every practitioner can talk the same way, and we can get to what's going on with you. So then you can start to answer your own predictive models.
Oh, well
Yep.
said. So next up, we have human design. What it is, it's a touch point aligning you to your true nature. And what it is not is authoritarian, right? We're not here to tell you what to do. Like I can't, I don't want that responsibility. Like I've learned it. I'm not here to order people around. I'm here to just put my own self in order. So it's not here to tell you what to do or put you into like a box or any like strict rules. It's just a way to be like, to touch you back to like, oh wait, this is who I am. Oh, this is who I am. Oh, I see how that expresses. And it just kind of gives you that touch point to play with in your experiment if you choose to. And if you don't, like, go do whatever else you want to do in life and like, good luck.
And the beautiful thing about it is these touch points, there's many touch points in a body graph, but it's finite. And the big ones are the ones that are the most important. If you really, when you really look at the system, you start to realize, wow, if I can just get to understand at least the first three or four things, I'm going to go a long way. And then I'll come back in for another, reading or analysis or something of that
Mhm.
nature. Yep.
Absolutely. Next up, human design. It is a means of understanding yourself and others. What it is not is heady rote memorization. Sure, like there's those of us who are like the super nerds and it gets us excited to learn this in depth and like totally take it apart. But for most people, it's just, I mean, if you take like one thing, like I really try to break that down with people in the readings. If you forget everything else I tell you, remember this one thing. And I give them those main things about their strategy, their authority, right? So it's a way of understanding yourself and having compassion for yourself. Before human design, like I was quite the mess. And as I started to learn my design, and it just allowed me to have this compassion for myself, right? Of like, why am I not like, other people? Why am I not like the generators who are doing and building? Like, why can't I keep up as a, now I know, projector? And it allowed this like well of compassion for myself of like, oh, I'm not supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be like them. I'm supposed to be like me. And then it broadened out to having a compassion of like, well, why isn't that person the way I want them to be? And like, oh,
Right.
because they're here to be who they are, and they're just wired that way, and they're not here to be what I want them to be. And it allows this kind of like, just, oh, this grace, this compassion, this dropping of the meh, meh, meh at yourself or at other people. Yeah. And like, oh, it's just a way to understand yourself and other people.
Ra said the coolest thing, and he said that the people helping him publish the very first book, mostly his friends who he had read for and were already awake, but that there was a discussion about the original subtitle, and they didn't want him to call it the Human Design System, right? But he said, nope, it's a Human Design System. This is like any other the systems of hydraulics, the hydraulic systems. It's no different. This is why we did it that way. But then he wanted to name it a no-fault guide for living, because human design keeps showing us how, when you really look at it, you look at the other guy, you start to find out it's not my fault. It's not their fault. They can't help it. Their not self is taking them away, or my not self took me away, or it's not my fault that something's going this way or that I am this way. It's how I'm made. So you start to find out the things that you are in your body graph are the things you feel most relieved when you finally accept it, because you already know you're that way. So as soon as you line to the things that are already there, resistance goes way down, right across the board.
And it gives you something to do with it, because so much of the time, like fault and blame, like we blame ourselves for things because things just don't make sense, and so I'm just going to blame myself for it, and we can go down that loop. Whereas, yeah, with human design, it's like, oh, the reason we got in that fight is, you didn't listen to your sacral response and went down a wild ride, and it got weird, and then I got weird, and then we both got weird and exploded. It's not a blame or a fault thing. It's just like, oh, that's what happened. It's like this mechanical situation. But what's cool though is then it gives you this opportunity to do something with it. Oh, we don't have to get in these stupid arguments as a couple. We can just understand the energy got weird, take a minute to separate and come back to it. So it's even beyond this like no fault, no blame. It's like, oh, I don't have to blame me or this other person, but I can totally do better. And by giving you an opportunity to do better, it's so much more rewarding than just blaming yourself or another person for it being bad. You can just grow beyond that.
Up to and including all those things that we think actually annoy us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when people are awake to their nature, if something's sort of bothering them, what happens is the partner, the other, starts to recognize, oh yeah, I guess that is. And then they either back off or they do it someplace else, or something sort of changes with that, and vice versa. It's stop taking it personally. As Rob would always say, please, folks, please, it's not personal. If someone is who they are, that can never be considered personal. Just like we all know, I'm sad, they made me sad. It's like, well, that's my sad. It's not that I made me sad. That's the real truth, or whatever the thing is. It wasn't them, even if they're there for it all and so forth.
Yeah. Perfect. So next up, human design is a tool in reclaiming your inner authority. And what it is not is disempowering, overwhelming, or inaccessible, or it doesn't need to be. If you're overwhelmed by something, step away and like come back to something simpler or whatnot. But the base of it and the purpose of it is just as it's this compass. It's a tool. It's something that you can use to reclaim yourself and understand yourself. And like, why does my body freak out in this situation? And why does it feel good here? And how do I understand that so I could move through the world with ease?
Exactly. And that whole inaccessible thing is, we turn that right around. The overwhelmed part, some people do feel a little overwhelmed because we read for them. That's normal.
There's a lot going
But
on
it
in human
empowers.
design.
It only empowers.
Yeah.
This is what I see. This truly empowers. And this beautiful inner authority of ours, the simplest way to see part of what your inner authority is going to tell you, never mind exactly how it works. We have to go into that in specifics, which we can't do here. But what it's going to tell you, no matter your type, no matter the inner authority, no matter the definition, it's going to tell you essentially what the 4 and 5-year-old version of yourself would have told you in their innocence before they were fully conditioned. The kid that just is themselves. And that's what it's going to tell you, leading to the axiom I'm always saying, the kid is always right. The kid is always right. So
Absolutely. It's really fun that you say that story, because it was literally one of the things my mom told me as I started going through like several years of my human design journey and just like healing a lot of stuff. And she's like, "Oh, you're becoming more like you were when you were a little girl." And I was like,
She said that?
she totally
Was it
said
a
that to me.
spontaneous
It
remark?
was totally spontaneous,
Oh,
but yeah, it came from her completely on her own, that yeah, you're becoming more like you were when you're a little girl. And I was sweet and soft and open before I was like, danger, protection, self-defense
right.
mechanisms. Yeah.
My goodness, that's a profound thing. I bet that hit you pretty hard in that very moment when that, yeah, I
It
bet you was
still
like,
does.
wow, mom, you might not realize, but what you said was pretty big.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but manifestors like, huh? What?
Huh? What? I'm done
Exactly.
already. Bye. Right.
So next up, human design is a science to be tested. And what it is not is, it's not a belief system, it's not a morality system, it's not a religion or a cult. It's not here to tell you what to do. No, there's no human design police that are going to come like barging down and knocking your door. And there is no morality to it. It's very mechanical. It's like Ross said, he's like, I'm a plumber. It's
Right.
just like, this goes where this connects to here. This is how this works. And if someone's trying to preach to you or make it weird, like, just walk away and like find somewhere else to learn human design. But yeah, it is a science to be tested. And the more you learn, it's kind of like these endless experiments that you can play if you want. Like, I really love them.
Mhm.
For a basic person, you can play like one or two experiments and like have these two little games you play with your strategy and authority. But for anyone, it's like there's just this endless supply of noticing the energy, and it's like seeing the tendrils in the matrix. It's like seeing the weave in a fabric, and you can see
Right.
these threads and how they connect. Like, I get all excited. It's like a game for me.
Absolutely. And a lot of people will want to dive right in because it is thrilling when you start to see, oh my God, we have this tech now. We actually know this. And the whole belief system is definitely not, or a morality system, or all of these things on the right of the thing that it is not, have centralized power grids of people. There's folks in charge and there's rules that you get shunned for if you don't know. Human design has none of that.
It's
It's
the
one at
opposite.
a it's the literally the opposite, and
Yeah.
because it's the science of differentiation. When they say to be tested, it's don't believe me, folks. Don't believe me, folks. You can see it for yourself. You just have to be open and willing enough, at least once or twice, to physically try and see your strategy, authority, and type by literally following the program that we lay out for you when we read and teach and show you.
Hmm.
It's incredible. You'll see it for yourself. It's empirical. And one
Hmm.
person at a time, bringing the empirical knowledge forward, finally creates the very same thing we got long ago when we're like, apparently the sun goes around, apparently the earth probably goes around the sun. That was a big day. When that, and they figured that out way
Yeah.
back then, and people probably hung for that. But regardless, the science was being tested, and it showed that it's more likely we're revolving around it than it around us.
Yeah, you start seeing enough things
You
that you can play with.
empirically, and then your cohorts see it, and then his
Yeah.
partner saw it, and then the other folks saw it. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
you see it. Yep.
Yeah. And there, it is interesting because, like, I know there is concern of like, oh, this is related to astrology. Oh, there's this, or like Hindu stuff, or is it New Age or anything like this? And I totally understand that. And I've even wondered, I'm like, am I doing something weird? Am I doing something bad? Am I looking into something that's in a way dangerous? And I really like have gone through that to kind of process through. And it's just like, it's using the zodiac astrology as like patterns and placements. It's not deifying, it's not ritualizing, it's not idolizing this above the creator, and the same thing, the I Ching. It's like, oh, these are patterns, the chakra system. This is how energy is moving through our body. So in these ways, I know there can be some concern there, and like to each their own, like whatever people want to engage with. But I've honestly found that this has brought me closer to God, because now I'm like, I can see the beauty of the design. I can see that there is a creator of some kind that loves us dearly to create something so intricate and so profoundly beautiful. And it's not an idolization, it's not a deifying or a worshiping of this.
There is
And
none.
Ra
Yeah.
was very
In fact,
anti
it doesn't
new
even
age.
fit.
No,
That
it's
that
just a
doesn't
very
fit in any of this.
it's a very
Yeah.
mechanical thing. It's I look at it the way a cardiologist would look at the circulatory system, where it's just
Yeah.
like, cool, the heart goes to this and this vein goes here and this artery goes here, to understand in that way. So I also just wanted to like address that, because I know there's sometimes some concern there, and do what's right for you. But that's how I've found my way through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And finally, we have human design is an experiment to enjoy. And what it is not is the end all be all. It's something to play with, it's something to engage with as it excites you, but there's more out there, and it's not anything. You don't need to again, don't idolize this, don't worship this, don't deify it. That's not the purpose of it. It is a tool, it is a compass and a map that you can experiment and play and enjoy.
By now or soon, as the system literally is catching on, because it's catching on like wildfire, one day there'll be a little picture of the chart on everyone's driver's license and in your doctor's chart or whatever at school for the kid. It's a little, right on your badge, so we can know who we're talking to, because it'll just be so commonplace, not idolized, just commonplace, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've often dreamed of oh, how cool it would be to be able to set up schools in line with human design in a simple way of oh, the non-sacrals, you get a couple nap times. You get a couple times where you can just go chill in your own energy, and the generators, the manifesting generators have extra PE,
Right.
Stuff like that. I've just thought oh, that'll be really fun. Once we kind of get to that way to just optimize for everyone.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. So good. Moving on.
So finally, I believe this is our last slide. We have just a glossary of terms to kind of go over, because, diving into human design initially, it's what is this? It can look really complex. There's numbers and lines and all sorts of interesting words. So we're going to do a simple glossary breakdown for you. So first up, we have strategy. And so strategy is the technique to best navigate according to your type. We're not going to go into the details of each person's strategy and their types. We have other videos. Just for the glossary, the strategy is here's what you do to navigate according to your type, whether it's manifestor, generator, man-gen, reflector, or projector.
Strategy to me has always been a way of describing to a person how they can key in on an experimental basis so that they themselves can witness what the chemistry is doing that brings them to their own inner truth. So it's it's your interface. And the thing is, it's a little clumsy at first. So it's not like an interface oh, let me get the app. Oh, look, it works so good. It's a little clumsy at first, right? And these techniques that navigate it help us get to the thing that strategy is really. Strategy is the product of type. There's 4 main types: the generator, the projector, the manifestor, the reflector. They all have a different strategy. And as we get you into that, you start to see it for yourself. And when we start to layer on the rest of what we'll go through in the glossary, bam, you'll never go back, is the thing. No one goes back once they see. I've never seen it.
Yeah, once you have those, initially it's what is this? This is a lot. Is this another thing? Do I need another thing? But as the couple things start clicking, and there's a moment where something is just so specifically spot on that there is this body knowing, there's this recognition, you're that's too precise. That's too precise. It's too tangible and so ready that, it tends to pique curiosity.
That's the seeing it. And as soon as you see it, you can't unsee what you saw, is the thing. You start to realize this is a scientific system. It's a little clumsy at first. If I don't know what I'm doing, I need some help I need it to be read. But if someone reads it for me and I do it, suddenly I can follow this for the rest of my life. Oh my God, I want to see what my children are. I want to see what my husband is. I want to see what my, all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So next up, we have authority, right? So you always hear strategy and authority, follow your strategy and authority. So we went over strategy. Authority is your body's guidance system for correct decision making. So again, this is going to be specific to you and which centers are lit up for you, but it's your body's knowing. Was it anthro-ontological? It's body knowing. Because you'll have it different. Everyone will have a different thing. Some people it's follow your gut, and some people are sleep on it, right? But you know that, when you jumped into something, you're oh, why did I agree to that? Oh, now I'm in it, and you've had the things where you're super into something and it was correct and you did it and everything was just perfect, like a dance. So this is the way that we can tune into it, is by learning what is our specific authority in decision making. And again, like Danny said, it's a little clumsy at first. It's a little weird. It's like learning a new dance, you're not going to tango great the first time. You're probably going to step on your feet and trip and look a little goofy. But if you play around with it, you start learning the steps, you start learning to see it and play with it, it becomes really fun.
It really does. And these things do go together, strategy and authority. I mean, they just are. And they're wildly different, these authorities. They're wildly different. So you gotta land it in so you see what they are, but without going through all the different authority types. They have you waiting, like Moni said. They have you knowing right away. They have you having to speak to hear your truth. They have you noticing that the stuff you say seems to also clarify what you mean at the same time. This is one of the strategies,
Mhm.
they all of this stuff. So it's I find it amazing. They have you simply responding. It's like, what do you mean respond? It's like that first response is right. That's what the kid would say.
Mhm.
And we teach people to see the difference between that and their mind starting to think stuff. You know what I mean? And then they start to get it. It's amazing.
Absolutely. So next up we have aura, right? So again, there's another one of those words like aura, your vibe, you're this, you're that. So your aura is the electrical system around your physical body, and it extends about 6 feet in either direction. So if you imagine like almost like a big donut around your
Hmm.
body, like a big old donut, and 6 feet out in all directions, there is this electrical system that's feeling into stuff. It's like, you get as close to somebody you really love and like your heart like starts to like flutter, right? You got a crush on somebody, or there's somebody that you're walking down the street and like you get a little too close to somebody and it feels real weird and you got to go, right? That it's those tendrils that are feeling into the world and sensing,
Hmm.
right? It's almost like your antenna system that's like sensing what's going on you and other people around you.
Indeed, indeed. And this whole aura thing is it's magnetic and it acts like a Wi-Fi. And it is what it's transmitting, amongst other things, is the particulars of your body graph. It's transmitting that into the other. That's how we notice things about people in the first place. It's not just visual and sight, although that and sound and all that has much to do with it. But the aura is already communicating is the thing. And so if we take ourselves and as we walk through life and we're in the aura of things, this is half the experience. And the thing is, we know that intuitively. But now we start to see the mechanics that the aura transmits our design into the other, and it transmits and allows and accepts the design of the other into us. Even on the other two more difficult auras where it's harder to break through, it's still happening. It's not happening.
There's still
That's
an
how we
interaction.
change. Totally. And sooner or later they let them in anyway. So it's always happening. You
Mhm.
know, Moni and I were just talking about a distinction we're not going to go into now, but it's between the four aura types. The aura type is like the skin and the shell around the whole thing. The aura is basically what makes the type. Because if it's open and enveloping like a generator, now that's a generator and it can't help. It can never be anything else, is the thing. So the aura makes the type. The aura is measurable. You put a yardstick out there and you get some measurement tools. You'll see, oh, there's a electromagnetic field around this person. Oh, there is information in here. Don't know how to read it, but there's information in here. Oh,
Mhm.
look, it's constant. They'll see all kinds. Oh, look, it has a charge of blah, blah, blah milliamps over such ohms. It's all there. It's working in the physical world just like everything else. And it's no wonder God chose to make such a perfect system, or however that worked out, because it shows this force inside of us that we get to know who we are. And you get to see it was some kind of intelligent design. Seems that way. It's really put together,
Yeah.
and even if it's not intelligent design, it's just sort of evolutionary, then even just the turn around the wheel starts to show how we evolve. So it all fits. And it
Mhm.
does not discount anything one believes about how we got here. Is the thing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a specific episode on like what is aura. I'm really excited about it. The
Hmm.
presentation is really, really cute. So that one's coming up in the next, few weeks or whatnot. So stay tuned. The last thing I was going to say about aura also is if you're ever like feeling weird, or maybe you and your boyfriend, girlfriend, like you're getting weird and it's a fight and you're just like, separate. Just separate your auras, like go 15, 20 feet apart if you can. Go take a walk and come back and let them know I'll be back in 10 minutes or whatever. But if you can separate auras for like 10, 15 minutes when things are getting a little hairy, relationship saver right here, 100%, right? Because sometimes it's like we're just taking in so much from our aura, the other person's aura, and the electricity is all jagged and weird. Just be like, babe, I love you. Let's separate and come back in 15 minutes. And you will
Yeah.
immediately separate, go into
Yep.
separate spaces, and you'll feel that energy drop. And you'll just have that like moment where you're like, okay, oh, this was me. This was not me. This was his stuff. This was my stuff. And it all just kind of settles back down. And you're no longer in that freak out, flight or fight stage, or like it can start like winding down. And then you can come back and be like, oh, I'm sorry, you were having a hard day, or this is going on. But yeah, if you're ever having a weird time, try to separate aura and just go stand 15, 20 feet away for a little bit and regroup into yourself alone if possible.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if people are awake to their design or starting to see it's there, you'll also be able to recognize that as soon as you breach and you're about 8 or 9 feet away fully, it'll really hit you. I have left the aura of that other person. There is a physical grip of me onto them and them onto me of some sort. You don't even have to name it. You just recognize it's there, and you recognize it breaks at a certain distance. And you start to realize, well, that is a very mechanical thing, even though everyone knows that intuitively. Get away from them, break that aura. It's just that when you've got the mechanic for it, it makes you more logical when you come back.
Absolutely.
And hopefully anyways. So
next up, we have conditioning. Conditioning it's external influences from family, from people around you, and even the planetary transits, right? It's the other data that is coming through. So you can look at your human design chart and you're like, cool, this is my consistent energy. And you can have this sense of like what is lit up. And then in all the white spaces on your chart, that's where other people and the planets can light you up. That's where you can temporarily, short-term feel that energy. And if we get lost in it, or we think that other people's energy is our own, it gets a little squirrely.
Absolutely. The whole thing about we're moving on to conditioning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as the conditioning starts to hit, it ends up being most profoundly in the open centers. And that's a nice, easy clue, because ultimately anyone can see that the open, all white centers that don't have a channel going to it, they can see them. And when we start keynoting what those things are doing to you and how they're taking you away from your nature because you think they're not what they are, you start to realize, oh my God, there's truly something to this. And that's where many readings even start, or at least that's right in the beginning after a few things, because there's a lot there. And the conditioning is everywhere. It starts from before we're even born, because we're in the aura of our mother the whole time. And as soon as we get out, the conditioning does start with stuff like food and how it's going in. It might not be right according to your design. There's actually a way to eat, a way to rest, a way to see, a way to view, a way to actually have cognition, a way to physically have a consciousness. All these things are there to be described. It's incredible. And at the same time, you start seeing those things that you're supposed to be. And then you see that this not self takes me away. And it is the conditioning, because our parents didn't know. Oh, the little emotional girl, if I just took a moment and said, sweetie, I know you're sad, but don't worry, it makes you smarter. Now, if a mom could have intelligently fleshed that out over the couple of days, telling a little girl that, totally different life. And that's such a small thing. And there's 100 of those things. All us open ego people, if our parents could have said, you're not here to prove anything, and just say you didn't feel like it and you didn't quit, you stopped. Two different things. I stopped. I didn't quit, and all these ego head trips that us open ego people have been under, and on and on and on. Love and direction, the fear of it, all of that, uncertainty, pressure, it's all there. And it's a conditioning, and it's who you're not. And when you see it, the conditioning becomes relatively okay. More than that, you start to push the people out of your life and bring the people in that fit what the conditioning is right for you. Because that's really what a good boyfriend, girlfriend thing is. I love you, baby. Condition me.
Exactly. Yeah,
I accept.
That's a really, really cool point, right? Because it's like conditioning is not always bad. Right. Conditioning is just part of the mechanics, that it's like we're here to be conditioned. But the thing is, it's to be conditioned correctly according to our strategy and authority, right? We're here to condition the right one. You're here to condition, the love of your life that's like correct for you and perfect for you. Like, I'm here to condition my boyfriend. He's here to condition me because his sacral responds and he's into it. And I've been invited, and my will is like, hell yeah, I'm super into this because that's my authority. And it's perfect and it's beautiful. And so it's learning to tune into what is me, what is outside of me, and what is that correct outside of me that I'm supposed to allow inside of me.
Yeah. Yep. Well put, Moni. That was poetic.
Thanks. Yep. It just came out.
We can move on after that one, baby. I don't want to follow that one up.
Perfect. So works perfectly into our next term, which is the not self, right? And this is not like, again, it's not like a boogeyman bad word or something. It's just a way of understanding the not self is what comes out. That's like, it's like our doppelganger, right? If you have your human design chart, all the stuff that's colored in, that's you, that's your consistent energy. And then not self, it's like the photo negative. That's what it is. The not self is the photo negative of you.
It very much is. And the thing is, it's even of a lesser, technically it would even be of lesser stature than a photo negative, because at least the photo negative helps make the picture anyways.
Damn,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
like, yeah, but it is like the photo negative because it's the counter. It's what you're not. That's the big thing. It's the what you're not part. And the what you're not is all the stuff that isn't defined in your body graph. That's the starting point of what you're not. And everybody is not a ton of things. You know what I mean? Everybody's got tons of things that they're not and a few things that they are, is the thing. And we get caught up in trying to be the things that we're actually not. The not self it treats the body like a slave. The not self originates from the mind that used to be in charge this whole time, when it was, for the longest time, what we thought was what we thought would be true. And the mind was so powerful because it measures things and it sees how to do stuff and it builds rockets and it does all this stuff, right? It's incredible what this thing does. Not to mention, we think it's the soul thing talking. Mostly we don't even think about it. It's like, oh, my mind, I came up with this to say. It's like, well, sure, you came up with that to say, but all of you came up with that to say, not just your mind. And then the mind says, I'm in charge, I'm the boss. No, you're not. There's an inner authority of some sort that is exactly not mine. Mind is the only thing that's precluded from being inner authority. That's a hard thing to hear. And at the same time, you start to realize, oh, mind is my outer authority. And it's just a separate nuance we'll totally get into, a lot down the road. But it's when you realize that, it becomes so powerful, because suddenly that's when mind starts to do the thing it loves to do. And it gets involved in the human design experiment. And now it's on board, not treating you as much as a slave and more as a witness, because it now is involved in the experiment with you. I realize I'm talking about this like, oh, mind, and then the rest of me, as if they're two totally separate things. And in one sense, they're very separate. They are separate. My mind and my body, we've said this all our lives, spirit, mind, body. We know there's a separation there. Human science shows you what that sort of is, without making you have to think that I'm like literally two separate things, walking around. No, you're you. Don't worry. We're not going to split you in half. It's just what you're not.
Yeah, the non-self is the signpost experienced when you're out of alignment. It's almost like what is like the old cartoons with like the coyote and the roadrunner, and then it's just like wrong way, and they just like lifts up a little sign. It's like that. It's that thing to notice where you're like, oh, is this me or is this my doppelganger? Is this like when you look in a mirror, you're not looking at you. It's the flipped version of you that kind of looks like you, but is kind of weird, right? It's that off. It's the anti-you. It's that flip that you can see. It's that the second like my authority speaks, I could feel that in my body. And then there's like a second or two later when then my head's like, but actually, Buddha, 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 Buddha. Right. It's that second later where you have that initial ontological bodily knowing that's correct. And it's that like, oh, but maybe you should go to that thing that's like, meh, maybe you have to do that, right? It's that little like whiny, like, kind of voice a little bit. But it's that signpost for you to notice, hey, this isn't me. And it's that ability to have that signpost and then to pause and then like course correct, like, oh, hey, I started going down this weird path. That's not good for me. Let me compass true north.
Absolutely. And this whole treating your body like a slave and you like what you're not suddenly starts to go away, the resistance in your life. That's what really happens. It suddenly just starts to die down because you start to see the things that you're not. And the whole signpost thing is beautiful. As soon as you start to see one thing, they all act like a signpost. I mean, the biggest, easiest signpost is I don't like it. And everyone's got something inside that's just like, nah, I don't want it. I'm not in the mood. Everyone's got a version of it. I'm just not in the mood. That's actually a signpost. And when it starts to show up, you can even just experiment with that without ever knowing your design. You can start to realize, oh, when I'm not in the mood, I don't have the energy to do the thing, even if I'm required to do it. And I don't do it as well. And I'm starting to treat my body like a slave. And I'm not going to live my best life if I have to do this day in and day out. Profound things can start to come in where you realize from that one little moment of I'm not in the mood, oh, I guess it is a chemistry that informs me. It's not my mind, but my mind will talk all about it to someone else, you know, outer authority, but not inner authority, never inner.
Absolutely. That's perfect to go into our last little glossary point, which is deconditioning, right? We went over conditioning. What is deconditioning? So deconditioning is simply acknowledging conditioning, right? And realigning with your true self. It's again, you have that signpost of, hey, this is weird. This feels funny. And then it's acknowledging it feels weird. I don't like it. I feel like I'm swimming upstream. And then again, compass and realigning with your true north to actually exist as you.
It so is exactly. It works just like that. It turns into this point of deconditioning where you start to realize that over time, this stuff falls off and doesn't come back. Unlike in the past when I thought I had worked on something and I'm never going to do that again, or this or that, whatever the thing is, and it seems to resurface in some way, or you hold on to it as a memory, or you let it torture you as a memory over time. All of these things, they drop off because we don't want them anyways, is the thing. And then the 4-year-old version of ourselves realizes, yeah, I don't dig it. And that's the deconditioning process filled with road signs. And also it turns over the cells in your body. I mean, right? It's every 7 years we go through a whole cellular cycle. So the cells in our body are part of that conditioning we're in. So in the very first few months, you'll get through a whole ton, but you won't get through it all. Over time, it just gets stronger and stronger. By the time you reach a few years in, everything's so much more powerful. And the beautiful thing is you get to see it right away. That is conditioning. And I would like to decondition that back to my factory settings, what I originally was when I was freaking happy. And I liked it. Put it this way, deconditioning gets you to the point where you can say, dude, I love me. I love the crap out of me. Dude, I love being me. This is great. Now, if you can say that to yourself with ease, yeah, you're pretty good. And if you sort of have a hard time with it or choke or gulp up or don't quite believe it, you know what I mean? Come in for some deconditioning.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. So you touched on it. So with human design, we talk about like the 7 years deconditioning journey, right? Because it's like in that time, your body will like totally reset itself. And so you can look at it in that long way, but you can also like break it down into the 3.5. Like at 3.5 years, now you're 51%. That's like a big marker when I got to my 51%. But even you break it down into, 2.5 years, break it down to a year, right? Like you can simplify these things. At least that works for me. When I like 7 years is a long time, break it down into smaller increments. And I mean, parts of our body are always renewing ourselves, right? We're always like losing dead skin cells. Your hair is constantly like falling out and growing new. Our nervous system is only 9 months old, and your nervous system redoes itself every 9 months. Right. So you're going through constantly, your bones are constantly destroying and rebuilding themselves, right? Every part of you is constantly in this, death and life cycle going through. So we're constantly deconditioning over this. So, don't get overwhelmed of like, oh, it's 7 years and you got to do this thing. It's like those 7 years are going to go by anyway. Break it down into smaller increments. And you're really just allowing yourself to be you. It's just like after you like cut your hair, right? You like got out of a bad relationship and you like cut your hair and you're like, oh, I feel freer because it was holding on to something. And it's like you get to go through this journey and experiment and let things go. Like you let yourself get in like an energetic haircut. You get to release these things and just again realign with your true self. And as time goes on, it does, because it is, in the regular world, it's hard to love who you are. And with human design, initially it's like, oh, I wish I was this. I wish I was this other type. I wish I had this center. And it's that's it. That's the not self. When you're like, I wish I had a defined sacral, like that's the not self. And you go further down your journey and you start to really love all the aspects of your design. And it's really beautiful. And so, yeah, I invite all of you into this. If it speaks to you and if it's right and your authority is correct, like, play around, see what happens.
And remember, none of this can be out of reach for you ever because it's genetic. You're already it. This is a genetic science, first and foremost, empirically noticed by you with the aid of those who see it already and can bring you to it. And then you can recognize for yourself, just like when you cut your finger and it stops bleeding because your genome has instructed the chemistry to coagulate so you don't bleed out. no different. Or any other type of chemistry. Girls understand chemistry. You got that chemistry each month, you know, that right. That's chemistry. You have no choice, is what I'm getting at, and it shows up, and you can start to rely on it. Will always, always, always do that, and that becomes deconditioning all by itself. Just that knowledge that gives you that kind of confidence to recognize, yep, this is the thing.
So that's our glossary. So that's our little intro to human design.
We could go on forever about what is human design. It's just it's a relatively complex, yet at the same time simple enough when you're shown it empirical, genetic truth that is turned into a system that, as we start to read it out of the body graph, that we see, oh yeah, these characteristics are there, and I do live them out, and so why not know them? You know. So that's,
read your user's manual, you know?
yeah, read the dang user manual. That's what this thing is. Especially if you're a mom, read the manual for your kids, because it's going to start in school and it's going to start with their friends as parents and stuff. So you want them to be whole so that they can show their friends.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Danny, for going through our human design introduction. Thank you, everyone who's watching live and on the replays. Thank you to everyone for liking and subscribing. It really, really helps. We're still like a little baby channel and we're still growing. So it really means a lot when you like, when you subscribe. Your comments make me so happy every time. And then I send them to the entire group chat and we all just like squeal and get really excited. So thank you for watching and enjoying and giving us positive feedback. You know, we're still finding our footing, but I think we've found like a really good rhythm and we have some really exciting shows planned for this year. I'm excited to dive
the
in.
meat and potatoes, baby, the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. And we will see you next week with our further deep dive into our circuitry series. And yeah, have a great day and I'll see you guys later.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.